Hello and welcome. My name is Zaffar Iqbal and you're watching the Mojo Story. Now, the Jammu and Kashmir Delimitation Commission has in fact given a report recently, and according to that report, of the 90 constituencies, 43 will be part of Jammu region and 47 will be part of the Kashmir Valley region. But what we're focusing on today is the issue of the PoK refugees. The Delimitation Commission has recommended that the center may consider giving the displaced persons from PoK some representation in Jammu and Kashmir Legislative Assembly by way of nomination of representatives of the displaced persons from PoK. Now, that is the subject of our debate today. Of course, we're joined by a prominent panel. We're joined by Rajiv Chuni, who is the leader of the displaced PoK refugees in Jammu. He heads SOS International. We're also joined by Zaffar Chaudhry, who's a senior journalist and analyst and who has thoroughly studied this subject. We're also joined from Jammu by one of the displaced persons, Colonel Modi, who is one of the displaced persons from Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. In fact, many people came to India after the partition, and of course, there are many who are now living in Jammu. We're also joined from Jammu by Arun Gupta, who is a spokesperson of the BJP and is based in Jammu, keeps a thorough eye on the politics of the state and the issues concerning. We are also joined by Najmu Saqib, who is the spokesperson of the PDP. Now, I was in Jammu recently and I did a story on the PoK refugees in Jammu. We have made two versions of this story. One is the bigger version that will, of course, be on our Mojo channel, but the shorter version would want to play that story before we go to our panelists. Let's start by playing that story.
For Vinod Kumar Datta, hardly a day passes when he does not go to meet his childhood friend Amarnath Sudan in Jammu. Their parents came to Jammu from Mirpur in PoK at the time of partition. They belonged to rich families but were forced to leave behind their properties and start their lives back from scratch in Jammu. Life was tough for them. Sudan, now in his 80s, became a driver, and Datta, in his 70s, was a government employee.
ऐसे बुजुर्ग है, मेरे ख्याल में 80 साल के हो गए हैं बिल्कुल. अब तो 80 साल का जो आदमी हो जाए जवान तो रहेगा नहीं, कमजोर तो दिन ब दिन होएगा.
5 years ago, a scheme was launched for giving a financial package of 5 lakh rupees to each family. But while most families got the finances, there are some, like Kailash Devi, that did not receive the money.
कोई बोलेगा डाल दिए जाओ आगे जाओ तो बोलते हैं कुछ नहीं आपका आया, क्या तंग कर रहे हो मुझे.
Now for the first time, there is a glimmer of hope for them. The recent J&K Delimitation report recommends nominated seats for PoK refugees, much like the Puducherry model, although it does not specify the number of the members that will be nominated. Those fighting for the rights of PoK refugees like Rajiv Chuni say it's a good beginning, but more needs to be done. Chuni's parents were also PoK refugees from Mirpur.
तो हम जो इन्होंने बनाए ये डिलिमिटेशन कमीशन, हम इनसे मिले. रंजना देसाई जी से मुलाकात हुई. उन्होंने कहा चूंकि हमारा जो स्कोप है वो बड़ा लिमिटेड है, हम कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के दायरे में काम करते हैं, उससे बाहर नहीं जा सकते.
But analysts say the move to give seats to PoK refugees in assembly has the potential to tilt the numbers in the favor of ruling party in the center. The delimitation report has thrown the ball in the government's court that will also eventually determine the exact strength of J&K Assembly as far as numbers are concerned.
लेकिन नंबर ऑफ सीट्स जो है मुझे लगता है कि जब गवर्नमेंट नॉमिनेट करेगी तो दैट्स गोइंग टू बी सिग्निफिकेंट, क्योंकि उनकी जो पॉपुलेशन है पीओके रेफ्यूजीज की वो तो कश्मीरी माइग्रेंट से जो है कई ज़्यादा है.
If nominated members of PoK refugees sit in the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly for the first time, it will be a big boost for this community which has been fighting for its rights for decades altogether. But how is it going to change the political dynamics of Jammu and Kashmir, and will this be in the end advantage to the ruling party at the center? That's the big question. In Jammu with Haris Togo, Zaffar Iqbal for Mojo Story.
So that brings us to our discussion. I want to ask you, Rajiv Chuni, I met with you and you were telling me about the problems that PoK refugees are facing in Jammu, and you have been fighting for their rights. Do you think it's a significant development since the partition? It's perhaps the biggest move to empower PoK refugees in Jammu.
निश्चित तौर पर ये एक सिग्निफिकेंट है, लेकिन मैं ये जरूर कहूंगा कि जब हिंदुस्तान और पाकिस्तान बना और पाकिस्तान की बंदूक से जो पहली गोली निकली वो मेरे लोगों की छाती पर चली और हम लोग वहां से विस्थापित हुए, मुजफ्फराबाद से, मीरपुर से, पुंछ से, गिलगित बाल्टिस्तान से। लेकिन आज तक बीते 7 से भी अधिक दशकों तक हमें ना तो विधायक चुनने का मौका दिया गया, ना हमें हमारा मेंबर पार्लियामेंट चुनने का मौका दिया गया। इसके बावजूद कि 7 नवंबर 1956 जब हमने कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन अडॉप्ट किया जम्मू कश्मीर का, हमने उस इलाके के लिए 25 सीटें छोड़ी और 75 हमने रखी जम्मू कश्मीर के लिए। लेकिन अफसोस इस बात का है कि वो 75 बढ़कर आज 90 हो गई, लेकिन मेरी जो थी वो 25 में से एक निकाल ली गई, 24 कर दी गई। वो 24 की 24 रही और उसको दोबारा लॉक कर दिया गया 5 अगस्त 2019 को, जबकि हमारे लोगों को
लेकिन राजीव जी आपको
हमला चाहिए था। मैं समझता हूं कि हमारी तबाही और बर्बादी का कारण भी यही था कि हम लोग असेंबली में अपनी बात नहीं कर पाए, पार्लियामेंट के अंदर नहीं कर पाए और सड़कों पर करते थे, वो सड़कों पर ही समाप्त हो जाती। तो मैं समझता हूँ कि डिलिमिटेशन कमीशन ने, हालांकि उन्होंने हमें कहा था कि हमारा मैंडेट नहीं है आप पर बात करने का, लेकिन हम ये जरूर करेंगे।
आपको लगता नहीं कि अभी तक आपके विधायक असेंबली में नहीं थे, लेकिन अब होंगे। लेकिन शायद यहाँ पे जफर साहब आप यू कैन कम इन। There have been PoK, people from PoK who are settled in Jammu and Kashmir. They have been a part of the assembly in the past, and they have also been there at important positions. So how is it different now?
Actually, all PoK refugees until 2019 have in any case been the state subjects, and post 2019 as the domiciles, as the bona fide domiciles of the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. So always entitled to vote and entitled to contest elections. What Rajiv Chuni is saying basically, that's about the displaced people, getting more attention from the government. It's probably in that context, but there was never a bar on them to be able to contest elections or vote in the assembly. Yeah.
Yes. Basically, I want to add one point here. The bar was on West Pakistani refugees, people who had come from West Pakistan into India at the time of partition. They could take part in the parliamentary elections since they were automatically, citizens of India. But till 2019, they were not citizens of Jammu and Kashmir. Remember, Jammu Kashmir had its own state subject certificate. They didn't have that state subject certificate, so they could take part in the parliamentary elections, not in the state elections. But that has changed now, and that brings me to the important question, which I want to ask Arun Gupta ji, who's also joining us. Doesn't it also mean, we don't know how many nominated seats will be there in the end, but doesn't it also mean that they will be nominated by the president on the advice of the government in the center? So essentially they are representing the center, they are representing the BJP. So even before the election, BJP has got its block of members in the assembly.
Zaffarji, one thing, let's understand what we are talking, which subject we are
Yeah.
talking.
Yeah.
We are talking about a sizable chunk of our friends and our part of the society who
Right.
have been a part of Jammu and Kashmir and who have not been given rights earlier for so many years. And after the BJP came into power, there was a very conscious and consistent effort to ensure that they are got into the mainstream. You see, the problem is that, once we start looking at a situation that what we don't have, that becomes a very debatable issue, and what we have and what we got, that becomes totally negated. Talking from a very different perspective and from talking from a very different point of view, I would only say that BJP as a party and BJP as a system and BJP as a sangathan, we are extremely conscious as far as the demands, the genuine demands, and the long pending demands are concerned. And out of those demands, so many demands have been met, and many demands which have been getting, to our notice, to our system, to our political. I mean, we also have the same information, and we also have the same view what they have. But my
No,
only
but
point is that
yeah,
we don't
yeah.
have we have to understand that for so many years we have been in a system, we have been somewhere where we have been totally ignored. Now we are coming back to the mainstream. We definitely will have to keep that kind of patience. And I assure you on behalf of the government and our central leadership that we are extremely conscious to this. Yeah.
Extremely conscious to this, but the fact remains that they will be nominated by the president on the advice of the central government. So obviously, where will their loyalties lie? That's a big question. Najmu Saqib, how much of a tilt in balance would you think this will cause in the end? Because we know so far the PDP and the National Conference have been the dominant forces. No doubt, BJP got 25 seats in the last assembly election. But here we don't know how many members will be nominated. Remember, 24 seats are vacant in Jammu and Kashmir Assembly. So this could go as much as 24. Where do you stand then? The decision has been made even before the election, before the first vote has been cast.
Well, I think I would like to remind your viewers that the only link between J&K and India, which Sheikh Saab, very consciously took in 1947, that was the link of democracy. And we see, slowly BJP gnawing at that, slowly eroding that constitutional bridge that Sheikh Saab had, sort of linked with the rest of the country. And obviously, you mentioned a number of 24. When you have an assembly of just 90 seats, if 24 seats are nominated, then
This is more than that. This is in addition to 90. Yeah.
presumably, it could be less. It could be 24. So all we are
No, the
saying is
24 is the number of vacant seats. We don't
max.
know how many will be nominated.
How
This can be
exactly?
1, this can be 2, this can be 10, or this can be more than that.
Precisely. So all we are saying is that if there's a certain norm of providing nomination, these numbers, for God's sake, let's ask a simple question. There are Sri Lankan Tamils, there are millions of them living in India, Bangladeshi migrants living in India. Okay, if this is the parameter that has been used for them, why not use the same parameter for the Parliament of India? Give them
because they are not citizens of India. Here we are talking about citizens of India. Because when they came after partition, they settled in Jammu and Kashmir, so automatically they became citizens of India and also citizens of Jammu and Kashmir, unlike the West Pakistani refugees. That's the point that I'm trying to explain.
But no. I agree with your point that with POK representatives, it's a completely different thing. I completely understand that. But all I'm saying is that there are different parameters. If we use the same parameters, there, for example, in the erstwhile state of Skim, there were a lot of people who, for example, a lot of people from Myanmar, a lot of people from Bangladesh, who were as well, who are citizens of India now.
No, my question is very specific to you. What does it mean for a party like the PDP?
It does not. First of all, it's very premature. It's very premature to say, since the numbers are not clear. It's very premature to say with certainty, like how exactly the process is going to
Yes.
sort of shape up eventually.
Yes.
But
Yes.
but having said that, what is important is that this system of nomination, this whole this it is basically an acceptance of defeat by BJP, that look, our numbers are weak and we are going to have this sort of, in the garb of representation, they are taking the support of these crutches. So
I
or
want to go to Zaffar Saab, because you say the process is not clear yet. Zaffar Saab,
it
maybe
is,
you can
I mean,
explain.
to us,
Maybe you can explain the process specifically on the issue of PoK refugees
Oh,
and
there
the
is
nominations and the seats that will be ultimately occupied for them in an assembly, where there were always seats for them, 24, which were not occupied, but now some of them presumably will be occupied.
There's basically no process. These are all questions of presumption. The Delimitation Commission recommended to the center that nominate a few members of the POJK displaced persons to the assembly. Now, this is for the center to take a call. The first thing is to accept that recommendation, and second thing is to determine the number of people to be sent.
So they can even reject that recommendation.
They can
will
even
not accept it.
see. I tell you, as we understand that how the government of India functions currently, the political perceptions and things around that, they can reject. They can also raise the number to 24. But one thing I want to quickly say, that what exactly should have been the process here, a fair process, which no one would have accused. I mean, for a long politicization of Kashmiri Pandits for over 3 decades, I can increasingly see a politicization of our POJK brothers as well. There is a politicization, because initially you can see that there is some kind of concession, some kind of approach, some kind of sympathy, but that ends in politicization. What Pakistan is doing exactly to the refugees of Jammu and Kashmir there, for a very long time, we were so much empowered that we would chide Pakistan that you are dealing with POK as just as an agency of Islamabad. But now we mimic more like POK, because now we are also a union territory. We're not a state anymore.
It's like the
They
same
have reserved,
model. Yeah.
just quickly, they have reserved 12 seats for the refugees of Jammu and Kashmir, 6 for the Kashmir Valley, 6 for the Jammu. All those 12 seats are put to election, put to vote. And the electorate are the refugees from Jammu and Kashmir who are spread across different parts of Pakistan. In my view, that should have been the process, so that the refugees, Rajiv Chunni would tell us.
I think Rajiv Chunni, when
there are more than 1 million of them.
When he met with the commission, in fact, he had a chat with them. He told me that he, in fact, described to them how the process should be. Rajiv ji, if you can, अगर आप बता सकते हैं क्या बात हुई और किस तरह से ये प्रोसेस होगी?
True.
देखें, ये डिलिमिटेशन तो बाद की बात है. हम चुनाव आयोग से मिले थे. हमने कहा था कि इन सीटों पर चुनाव हो सकते हैं. कहने लगे कैसे? हमने कहा जैसे कश्मीरी पंडित विस्थापित है, वो अगर हब्बा कदल से विस्थापित है तो दिल्ली में बैठकर हब्बा कदल के लिए वोट करता है और गिना जाता है हब्बा कदल के लिए. तो मैं अगर मीरपुर से विस्थापित हूं तो मेरा वोट जम्मू में लेकर मीरपुर में क्यों नहीं गिना जा सकता? आज 12 लाख लोग हैं जो जम्मू कश्मीर के अंदर हैं और 5 लाख के करीब जम्मू कश्मीर से बाहर अन्य राज्यों में हैं जो मेरे लोग हैं. तो अगर ये कहा जाए कि चुनाव कराने हैं, हम उसके लिए भी तैयार हैं. उस रास्ते से भी सीटें भरी जा सकती हैं. और अगर ये कहा जाए कि टेरिटोरियल कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसीज हमारे पास नहीं है तो फिर नॉमिनेशन का भी रास्ता है. हमने कहा था कोई भी रास्ता अपनाइए, लेकिन हम डेमोक्रेट्स हैं, हम पाकिस्तान की बात करते हैं. लेकिन अभी जफर साहब ने एक जिक्र किया यहाँ पर POJK की असेंबली का. वहां पर यहाँ से गए हुए विस्थापितों के लिए बकायदा तौर पर असेंबली में सीटें हैं, उनकी आवाज वहां है, वहां अपनी बात करते हैं. लेकिन हमारे लिए क्या है, कौन सा फोरम है? यहाँ बात चली कि हम लोग, मैं एक बात साफ कर दूं कि हम यहाँ के बोनाफाइड सिटीजन हैं, सबसे ज्यादा पुराने और सबसे ज्यादा हम पक्के यहाँ के नागरिक हैं 47 से पहले के. लेकिन यहाँ पर आने के बाद क्योंकि हमें एक चंक बनाकर नहीं रखा गया, हमें बिखेर दिया गया अलग अलग जगह. अगर हम इकट्ठे बैठे होते तो शायद हम आपसे सीट भी ना मांगते. हमने इसलिए सीटें मांगी हैं क्योंकि मैं मीरपुर की नुमाइंदगी करना चाहता हूं, मैं वहां पैदा हुआ हूं. मेरे लोग मुजफ्फराबाद की नुमाइंदगी करना चाहते हैं, वो वहां पैदा हुए हैं. मेरे लोग कोटली की, बिम्बर की, मुजफ्फराबाद की, हटियां दुपट्टा की, छंब की, इन जगहों की नुमाइंदगी करना चाहते हैं जो आज तक नहीं हुई. मैं समझता हूं कि एक संदेश जाएगा देश और दुनिया के अंदर कि हम उस इलाके को लेकर खाली बातें नहीं करते, संजीदा भी हैं. और इसके लिए पहल करनी पड़ेगी
कि हमारे लोगों को नुमाइंदगी मिले, हम अपनी बात करें, हमारा लोकस बने, हम राष्ट्रीय अंतर्राष्ट्रीय सतह पर बैठकर अपनी बात करें। और वहां पर जिस तरीके से काम हो रहा है, आज वहां ट्रेनिंग कैंप्स चलते हैं, वहां लॉन्चिंग पैड्स हैं, वहां पर सारी शरारतें होती हैं, वो मेरे इलाके में होती है जहां से मैं आया हूं। मैं समझता हूँ इन सारी चीजों का जवाब देने के लिए ये निहायत जरूरी है कि मुझे नुमाइंदगी मिले। धन्यवाद।
Let's get a sense from a displaced person, कर्नल मोदी, who is with us. सर, आप बताइए, आपके लिए क्या मायने रखता है या कोई मायने रखता है?
You know, I'll further take on from where Mr. Chuni has left.
Yeah.
First, we were spread all over. Some people, wherever they could find place, poor chaps had to get into that because survival was more pertinent and important. Now you see what Mr. Chuni was saying. He's been saying for the last about couple of decades. Nothing has happened. Successive governments just gave us love and regards up to the four walls of the government, and then they were given, all of us given, saying that things will come in your way. Just to give you an example, my village people were initially brought to a particular place, out of which quite few of them were the government employees. So immediately land was allotted. Lo and behold, after a couple of days, we were told that the J&K government has given a verdict that the land only for the tillers. So we were again thrown out from the place, again spread all over. It is sheer determination of my clans, my people, that we re-established and we became worthy of giving needy living to our children.
No, but how do you think now things are going to change? That's the question that I'm asking. With the nominated members, how are you optimistic that things will change? Because in the past, there have been people from PoK who have been in the assembly. Some of them rose to the level of minister. How do you think things will change now?
Things shall definitely change when people know there is a source who's going to speak about me in the assembly. Okay. And he's going to take
can I say a word?
Yes. Let him finish, Najmu Saqib. I'll come to you.
I'll give you a personal example. I was very happy that I'm getting 5.5 lakhs because I'm a retired man.
Yeah.
Till today, I haven't got it. So imagine
that is what we will ask. Arun Gupta, because he represents the BJP. We have one of the case studies in our story. She also told us that she didn't get the money. But before that, I want to quickly get a word from Najmu Saqib.
While I completely empathize with the population who have suffered tremendously, I mean, it goes without saying that the community as a whole, has suffered. I mean, there have been multiple, and I am privy to, because I've studied in Jammu, and I'm privy to a lot of these stories, the horrific stories, and how things that they had to go through. But all we are saying is that this community needs to realize that they are being used as a vote bank. They are being used. They are firing from the BJP is firing bullets from their shoulders right now. That's number one point. And number second, as you rightly said, that we have to see how exactly does the representation help. We have seen representation for Dalits in the country. I mean, I am not against it. I am all for representation. All we are saying is that BJP, the way BJP is doing it now, is that they are weakening this institution of democracy. They are forever, trying to marginalize and disempower and disenfranchise the Kashmiri population. That is always. But my point is that we completely empathize with their pain. Their pain is genuine.
Arun Gupta, your reaction that BJP is firing from the shoulders of PoK refugees?
I don't know how he has come to this conclusion, but then that may be his personal opinion. But as far as the BJP is concerned, it just wants to remind my worthy friend that they have been in power for so many years. What have you done? You have been just doing all those things which you.
That's a very valid question. But
No, I'm coming back.
Yes.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
you were telling something. Let me know.
Yeah, I was asking that Colonel Modi on our panel, and one of the case studies in our story said that 5 lakh rupees were promised to them. Most of them got that money, but there are still some who haven't got the money. So, don't you think that's a lapse when people are not able to get the benefit of the scheme? Whose responsibility is it? Obviously, the ruling party, the BJP is ruling at the center, and Jammu and Kashmir is the union territory.
Yeah, certainly. What you say, you have a very relevant point. My point is, the government devised a mechanism. Government gave, there were 10 people example. Government gave money to all, say 9 people, and 10th has not got it. There has to be some reason, one. Second is, if there is no reason and still it has not been done, it's a matter of concern, even for us also as a political party. See, I'm not talking about the government. There are two ways of looking at things. One is political party and one is the government. Yes, consciously, again, I'm repeating the word, consciously, we have tried to come to a level and conclusion that everybody to whom we are committing, we should be in a position to satisfy, and we should be in a position to take our commitments and take whatever we say, we are able to fulfill that. But this is an exception case. Yes, it needs a proper, to look into why it has not happened. Then now it has come to our knowledge, we'll look into this.
Okay. Colonel Modi, you wanted to quickly put in a word.
Last speaker, friend from PDP, he was mentioning that these are only assumptions at that moment. So giving assumption only, one should not come to the conclusion. These are the few things, stop roads which will turn in against us rather than helping us.
These are not conclusions. Obviously, a lot remains to be seen how it will pan out. But Zaffar Saab, what is your sense that now this has happened? 2 nominated members for Kashmiri Pandits. We'll be seeing protests by Kashmiri Pandits here in Valley. They say that they want to go back to Jammu. A lot of activity happening. People from Jammu who have wanted to go to Valley are not willing. So situation on the ground is different. We are talking at different levels. Here we are talking about nominating members in the assembly, be they for Kashmiri Pandits or for PoK refugees. But will their lot change? Some of the case studies in our story you saw, they are living in a very bad condition.
I must say, in my most honest statement, that whether it's the case of PoK refugees or the Kashmiri Pandits, what they deserved ever since, that has never been given to them. None of the governments over the past 70 years dealt with the PoK refugees the way they should have deserved, and same has been the case with the Kashmiri Pandits. So these approaches are purely on the basis of a prevailing political environment, whether it is today or whether that was a few decades ago. You heard Colonel Modi and you heard Rajiv Chuni as well, that when they came here, the allotment should have been made right away at that time. You keep issues pending for a further political issue at some point in time. There are no settlements. There are no, a large-hearted approach to any of this. Well, of course, I mean, if you nominate members, of course, this process of nomination is very skewed and it is tilted in the favor of the government. But through whatever way, when these members come to the legislature, that really becomes a pressure group. Communities, they mount a pressure on the members mount a pressure on the legislature, on the government. So some narrative is built around that, of course.
We want to understand the specifics. They will have the voting rights. Tomorrow there is a vote of no confidence motion in the assembly. They will obviously cast the vote in the favor of the party that has nominated them, the party ruling at the center. Or is it not the case? They won't be having the voting rights.
In a gentle way, and trying to be a little less harsh than Najma Sakis has been. So this is basically what that the government has created a block in its favor much before the elections. So whether this is going to be 2 members, 4 members, or 6 members, the nomination has to be by the government. So the members nominated by the government with voting right will eventually vote in favor of the government. The government has its,
yes.
government
That's
has
the
its
point. That
numbers already in its favor.
That's the point I started this discussion from. But Najmul
Yes.
Saqib, a valid question from BJP. National Conference, PDP, at Mufti Saab's time, Mehboobaji's time, they've been ruling Jammu and Kashmir. What have you done to change the lot of these people? Why shouldn't they be optimistic of any sort of a help, anything that they sense is going to help them, empower them? Why shouldn't they be optimistic? The point that Arun Gupta is raising is that what have you people done for them?
First of all, my apologies, Zaffar Saab. I didn't mean to sound harsh. I'm actually a little bit tired today, so my apologies if I came across as
You have a right to sound harsh to the government.
But
you're perfectly fine. Please go ahead.
You have a right to sound harsh to the government. I was just trying to be a little more careful.
I completely agree. I completely agree. Look, as Zaffar Saab rightly said, there have been a lot of things there. I mean, things which I would have personally liked the state governments, regional parties do more in their favor. I'm certainly a votary for that. But all we are saying right now is that the institution that there is already a huge setback for democracy in Jammu and Kashmir. What we saw post August 5, I mean, we have betrayals like 87, right? Massive rigging, and that is still fresh in the memory of the people. And if this this constant instilling in the drilling in the minds of the people that this is the tactical rigging that BJP wants to, they want to win the elections before elections, and that is our only concern. We are not against any sort of justice that is meted out to the community as a whole. As I said earlier, that I completely empathize. They have been through a lot. They have been through a lot as a community, and I would like their. I have a lot of friends in the community as well. I would want them to have all the rights to be equal citizens as we are. But all we are saying is that they are being misused by people.
You raised two important points: tactical rigging, the words that you used, and 1987 election. Of course, that is taking our discussion in a different zone. But last word to you, Rajiv Chuni. You want to quickly come in and explain that how is it going to change your lot? What are we going to see in the future?
देखिए, सबसे पहले तो मैं नजमुल साहब की बात का जवाब देना चाहूँगा। इन्होंने कहा कि ये पार्टी आज इनको इस्तेमाल करेगी। इनको मैं बता दूं कि जब प्रोविजन हो जाएगा तो ये 2, 4, 5 साल के लिए नहीं, पूरी जिंदगी के लिए होगा, और कल को कोई दूसरी पार्टी भी सरकार में आ सकती है, ऐसा नहीं। और जो यहाँ काउंसिल में होता था, लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल में जो 8 सीटें नॉमिनेट की जाती थी, तो पार्टियां किसको करती थी? जिनके लिए रखी जाती थी उनको तो कभी मिली नहीं है। आप भी जानते हैं कि ना टीचर्स को मिलती थी, ना कोऑपरेटिव से आए आदमी को मिलती थी, ना साइंटिस्ट को मिलती थी। वो तो उनको मिलती थी जो चुनाव हार जाते थे। ये सिलसिला पीपल्स डेमोक्रेटिक पार्टी ने भी चलाया, नेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस ने भी चलाया, कांग्रेस ने भी चलाया। अगर आज भाजपा चला रही है तो मैं समझता हूं इसमें कुछ गलत नहीं है, लेकिन मैं इसको इस तरीके से देखता हूं कि मुझे नुमाइंदगी मिल रही है। हालांकि मैं बता दूं कि पीपल्स डेमोक्रेटिक पार्टी ने यशपाल शर्मा जी को एमएलसी बनाया, वो हमारे पीओजेके के विस्थापित थे, लेकिन मैं उनको इसलिए नहीं मानता क्योंकि वो आपकी पार्टी के थे और आपने उनको पुंछ के कोटे से बनाया। लेकिन जिस दिन आप मीरपुर से बनाएंगे, पुंछ से बनाएंगे, मुजफ्फराबाद से बनाएंगे, गिलगित बाल्टिस्तान से बनाएंगे, मैं उस दिन मानूंगा कि सीरियसली आप हमारे लिए कुछ कर रहे हैं। बाकी इस तरह से कहना कि हमारे कंधे पर बंदूक रख करके चला रहा है, मैं समझता हूँ कोई नहीं चला सकता। कोई हमारे कंधे पर बंदूक रख कर नहीं चला सकता।
यशपाल शर्मा जी की बात हुई, राजीव जी, एक 10-30 seconds.
Najmul Saqib, a very realistic point raised by Rajiv Chuni. No matter who nominates, which party gains out of it, doesn't matter. They are also gaining. That is more important for them. Now you go ahead.
Yes. as Rajiv ji mentioned that Yashpal ji was nominated from Punch Koda. Rajiv ji, देखिए, हम एक होता है रिप्रेजेंटेशन, एक होता है कि आप जियोग्राफिकल बाउंड्रीज को पार करके एक पॉलिटिकल कॉन्फ्लिक्ट में आ जाए। हम उसमें आना नहीं चाहते हैं। हमने जो देखा, बीजेपी ने भी रिप्रेजेंटेटिव किया, पीपल्स डेमोक्रेटिक पार्टी ने भी अपना जो है इस कम्युनिटी से जो है रिप्रेजेंटेटिव दिया है। ऑल वी आर सेइंग, देखिए हमने आपको बार बार कहा कि हम चाहते हैं कि एक एसिमिलेशन प्रॉपर और डिग्निफाइड हो। ऐसा नहीं कि एसिमिलेशन आपकी जो है हाफ हार्टेड हो और आपको इस्तेमाल किया जाए किसी पॉलिटिकल पर्पस के लिए। हम आप एज अ पॉलिटिकल पार्टी ये मतलब आश्वासन देते हैं कि आपके जहां पे भी हुकूक की बात होगी, हम उधर शाना बशाना आपके खड़े हैं। बट आज इस समय पे जो अभी घाव हम आपके ज़मन में नहीं कह रहे हैं कि आप कह रहे हैं कि कोई भी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी जो है तब्दील होगी, बट रियलिटी तो ये है ना कि कश्मीर फॉर एवर डिसएम्पावर हुआ। आप देखिए, हम उस हिसाब से भी इसको देखते हैं। आप एक समझिए कि जहां पे रिगिंग 87 में एक नेकेडली ब्रेजनली मैंडेट को चोरी किया गया, उसके बाद अगर आज ये सिलसिला फिर से एस्टैब्लिश होगा, तो कश्मीर के लोग और एक धारा के लोग जो हमसे दूर चले गए हैं, हम उनको मुख्य धारा में वापस कैसे लाएंगे? आप उस प्रॉब्लम को ऐसे देख लीजिए।
I have to wrap this debate, but I don't think there are any two parallels between 1987 rigging and so-called rigging and now these nominations. But you raised a very important point, dignified assimilation. I think that's a very somber thought to end this debate on. Thanks to all our panelists for joining us today, and thanks to our viewers. That's all we have in today's show.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.